Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am so excited for today's video because we are going to be testing something that I have been wondering for a very long time, and that is, does the sponge really make that much of a difference? I have bought several sponges here of all different price ranges, and we're going to see if the sponge actually makes a difference. You know, do you need to spend $20 on a beauty blender, or can you get away with a $5 EcoTools sponge? We're gonna find out, but before we do, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel because I have a lot of new videos coming out very soon. Alright, let's go ahead and jump right in. First things first, let's go over these sponges that I have bought. I bought 5. I got these 4 from ULTA and the Beauty Blender from Sephora. So let's just go over each of them. So we've got the classic Beauty Blender. This is sold for $20. We've got an Ulta Beauty large sponge with stand super blender, and this is the one that looks the closest to the Beauty Blender. These are really, this is like a good Beauty Blender mock from appearance. And this sponge was $6.99 from Ulta. We have got a Real Techniques sponge, and I have actually used this one before. This is Miracle Complexion sponge for foundation and BB cream. And this one is $5.99, so this is $1 cheaper than the Ulta one. I'm gonna start putting them in order of price. And then we've got an EcoTools sponge. This is the Total Perfecting Blender, best with liquid and cream foundations. And this is $4.99. This is the cheapest of the sponges, so that's $1 cheaper than the Real Techniques, which is $1 cheaper than the Ulta one. And then we have this Tarte sponge, and that is $16, so it's not that far behind from our $20 Beauty Blender. So as far as packaging goes, these are pretty similar. The cheaper sponges, they're just in little plastic cases. Same with our Ulta one, but the Ulta one does come with a stand to dry it. The Tarte one came in a cute little bag. I actually think that this packaging is really cute. And then the Beauty Blender comes in a like a thicker plastic case, and you get to like dry your Beauty Blender on top of this. I think that's why it's probably like a nicer packaging. So of course, like the two more expensive ones have the better packaging in my opinion. So let's go ahead and open up these sponges. So this packaging is, of course, that like annoying packaging that you really have to like cut into to get out. So I wish they didn't do that. This is just unnecessarily difficult. So this is our EcoTools sponge. This is the shape that we have here. We've got 2 flat edges. One edge is a lot longer than the other one, and then it's still got a round bottom. This one's a very, very dense sponge. I already noticed that as a difference from the Beauty Blender. As I've used this Real Technique ones, and I've used the Beauty Blender a million times. So this already does feel different compared to both of those. Let's go ahead and open up the Real Techniques sponge. Now this is closer in like feeling to the, actually these do feel pretty similar. They're both very, very firm sponges, very, very smooth as well. Let's get the Ulta one out. Okay, this is really annoying packaging. Okay, so here is our Ulta sponge. Also quite firm. Not as firm as the green EcoTools one. It's a little softer than that one. Squishier, I mean. It's got an actual metal stand. It's not like plastic. This is like actual metal, it feels like. So you can dry it like this. So that's kind of cute, and it's got little hearts, so I do like that. And then our Tarte one here. Okay, and here is our Tarte one. It is got a flat edge here and then like a nice pointed edge at the top. I quite like these shapes. These have very similar shapes with the flat edge and then the rounded on the top. I do like having edges like this because it does make it easier to kind of like get up into like the under part of your eye. I don't know. And then here is our Beauty Blender, and it comes right out. And this is the squishiest to the touch of all of these. These other ones, this one's pretty close actually, the Tarte one. But it squishes a lot easier than the others. So here they all are. Just comparing the textures, they all really, other than like the squishiness factor, the texture, like just like touching your finger on them, is all quite similar except for the BeautyBlender. The BeautyBlender actually feels less smooth than the others. Yeah, the BeautyBlender is a little less smooth. It's got a little more texture, and even looking really closely at them, it has, like, you can see more spongy look to it, where these are a little smoother, especially this green one. It's like very smooth, while you can see little like holes of the sponge in the BeautyBlender. Alright, so what I'm going to do is get all of these wet, because that's how you apply. So I'm going to go ahead and dunk each of these and then see how they expand and if they all feel different to each other once they're wet. So I actually use a BeautyBlender every single day. Here's the one I used today. And I purposely bought a brand new one just so we can compare actual brand new sponges and not my used one. Is it mildly concerning that this is the color of the water from brand new sponges? This is why you wash your sponges when you buy them, people, because this is kind of gross. So here are all of the sponges now that they're dampened. They have all grown tremendously. So let's go ahead and start with our EcoTools sponge. This one is quite dense still. It is obviously softened now that it has water in it. Here's our Real Techniques. This one is much squishier. I've used this one before, so I already knew that. This one has a lot more squish to it than this one. They both feel quite similar in texture wet. Now let's compare this one to the ULTA one, which was the next step up. ULTA one is way squishier than this one is. So it seems that the more expensive the sponge is so far, like the squishier it is. I don't know how much that really matters that it's squishy, but that is like the immediate thing that I can see or feel that is different between them. These feel physically the same on the outside. So far all of these feel the exact same, minus the squishy level factor. Then we've got our Tarte one, which again squishes much more easily. This one has a little bit more texture. It's kind of closer to the BeautyBlender sponge now. But I can visibly see that it looks like it's got a little bit more texture now that it's expanded. A little less smooth feeling, I think. Interesting to note. And then we've got our BeautyBlender, which squishes the easiest. This is like a super light, spongy sponge, whereas these other ones increasingly get more dense feeling. BeautyBlender immediately has more texture. I can feel that it's kind of like a little fuzzier in texture, but this one is the closest feeling to the BeautyBlender. But the BeautyBlender is like a lot more texture on it than any of these other ones, especially like when you go back down to like the EcoTools sponge. This one feels like it's got a lot more texture to it. Alright, so now that we have felt the texture of all of these, I am going to, over the next couple of days, be using a different sponge each day to put on the exact same foundation and the exact same primer. Everything that I do for my face will be the exact same so that we can truly see if it's the sponge or not. So down to my skincare routine, how I wash my face, how I do my moisturizer and serums, it's all gonna be the exact same. My primer's gonna be the exact same. I'll probably, maybe I won't even use a primer. I think I won't even use a primer, but I'm gonna be using this YSL All Hours foundation every single day so that we can truly test how these sponges all act. I know this foundation very, very well, so I will be able to see if anything happens strangely. My first guess, like if I had to guess how this was gonna go, I don't think I'm gonna be able to tell a difference in my foundation. I can feel a difference in the sponges, but I don't think I'm gonna see anything different on my face. I don't really notice a difference when I use the Real Techniques one to my BeautyBlender. But I haven't really paid that much attention to it in the past. This time I'm actually gonna be like really trying to see if there's a difference. So I don't know. I think they're all gonna kind of be the same. So I'm hoping that's the case because then I won't have to buy a $20 BeautyBlender. BeautyBlender has done so well with their marketing to make you think that you need to spend $20 on a sponge for your foundation to go on perfectly. So I'm very curious if this $5 sponge can do the same as my $20 Beauty Blender. It is the first day of tests, and I'm actually going to do this a little bit differently than I had planned. Originally, I was going to do one sponge per day, but instead I'm going to do a little bit of comparison. I'm still going to go in order from cheapest to most expensive sponge, so we'll be doing the EcoTools sponge compared to the Real Techniques sponge today. Tomorrow we'll do the ULTA sponge compared to the Tarte sponge, and then on the last day I'm going to do the Beauty Blender compared to whichever one of these performed the best. If I can even tell. I may not even be able to tell if there is a difference between any of these. So I have used the Beauty Blender every time I've applied foundation for like the last few years. On occasion I will use a Real Techniques sponge, just when I need to quickly run to CVS and grab a sponge. So I know the Beauty Blender really, really well. So I'm going to see if I can pick a favorite of these, and then we'll compare it to the Beauty Blender on the last day. So up first is the battle between the EcoTools $4.99 sponge and the Real Techniques $5.99 sponge. So I have my skin prepped, and I'm going to do it the same way every single day as I said, and we're going to be putting on the YSL foundation with the Born This Way concealer, and I have already dampened these and they are ready to go. So let's go ahead and do a half and half. I'm going to go ahead and use the EcoTools sponge on my left side of my face and the Real Techniques on my right side. So let's go ahead and start with our EcoTools sponge. I'm going to go ahead and shake my foundation here and get a couple pumps of this. I'm going to go ahead and use this shorter flat side. I'm just going to dip in and go ahead and apply. So this half is on. I was able to feel before that this sponge is much denser, and I can feel that putting it on too compared to the Beauty Blender. The Beauty Blender just bounces back much more sponge-like than this. But visibly, I mean, it's kind of looking the same as always, but let's go ahead and put the other side on with the Real Techniques now. So both sides are on, and as I expected, I don't see a physical difference on the foundation. Both sides look the same. I will say though, like the shape of the sponge, the edge of this is nice for under the eye, but in some ways I did prefer just using this one. I don't know. Am I biased because I've used this one before? So yeah, I cannot tell a difference between these two sponges. They look the exact same on my skin. The application is the same. The only difference is obviously the shape and the feel, where this one's a little bit more dense than this one is. But the actual application is the same, as I kind of thought it would be. So tomorrow I'm going to go in and test the Tarte sponge with the ULTA sponge. So it is not the next day, it is like 3 months later. I filmed what you just saw on October 7th of 2019, and it is January 12th of 2020. That week that I was filming this got super busy, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and continue testing these two sponges on my own time without filming, wash them, see how they wear and tear and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it was like Thanksgiving and then the holidays, and then all that time passed. But anyways, so I had decided to continue testing these on my own time. It has been 3 months, but these do not have 3 months of use. Side note, I travel every single week for work because I'm a consultant. And when I travel, I use a Beauty Blender just because I don't know, no particular reason, it's just what I do. So I had been testing these out on the weekend, so they probably each have about 10 to 15 uses. So they've gotten a couple washes, and I've really been able to test them out. This sponge here has some wear and tear. The cheaper one, focus, would ya? There we go. Yeah, as you can see, it like was tearing, and I think it's because of my drawer, because I stick them in a drawer. But that didn't happen to this one, and it doesn't happen to my Beauty Blenders, so this is the only one that's ever like torn like this, but it's not like the end of the world. This is the cheapest sponge, so I'm not surprised. But with my multiple wearing and washing, I did not notice any difference with the application or anything like that, or how long makeup lasted or anything. But I did find a preference for shape and the squish factor. So I prefer this shape. This is kind of nice, but it's also just kind of annoying, to be honest, after like using it multiple times. I just prefer using this for the under eye rather than this. And I also prefer the lighter, bouncier sponge than like the harder sponge. It's just a personal preference. So with that being said, today's test is supposed to be our ULTA sponge, which was $6.99. I need to squeeze a little more of the water out of this. Didn't get to do that yet. So yeah, we've got the ULTA sponge and then the Tarte sponge that was $16. So this one was the closest to the Beauty Blender. So that's what I'm really curious about testing. Also, since I use my Beauty Blender every single week for work, I was really able to like compare going back and forth between these cheapy sponges and the Beauty Blender, which I think will be helpful for completely comparing everything. Anyways, so we're gonna go ahead and do my foundation and concealer the same way that I had done back in October. Everything has still stayed the same. I'm pretty basic, still use the same foundation and concealer on a regular basis. So we're gonna go ahead and do the ULTA sponge on the left side and the Tarte one on the right side. We got the YSL foundation. Since I filmed this in October, I don't wear foundation for work. I just wear like a tinted primer, and then I always use this concealer. And then sometimes a tinted moisturizer, but I'm hoping this still kind of matches me because I'm a little pastier now than I was in October coming out of summer. So I picked the lighter one. I was using BD 40 in October, and this is BD 35 because I have two shades, but this is still probably gonna be a little tan for me, but it's all for the experiment, so it's okay. So we've got the ULTA sponge, no primer, just as I did before. Oh, this is gonna be really tan for me. Oh well, I forgot to get my mirror. I'm just gonna do this without looking. I'll use my monitor sitting in front of me. Okay, now we have the mirror. It's a little tan, but it's not like terribly tan, which is good. Like it's definitely a little, it's not that bad actually. Okay, anyways, let's get some more for the other side. So this one, honestly, very, very similar to the Beauty Blender by like feel, like this. Definitely a little bit firmer, not as bouncy, you could say. So let's go ahead and do the Tarte one. This one I feel like will feel the most like the Beauty Blender just based off the previous stuff I've said about like the texture and the squish factor. So let's go ahead and do this one. Okay. We have both sides on. Honestly, I think I am, I don't know if I'm crazy, but I think I am seeing a difference with this sponge, but not in a good way, which I'm surprised for. I feel like it's kind of, it was like blending patchy for a moment. Like there was a spot here, I don't know if you saw me like kind of wiping, it was like not blending right. I don't know if it's like a weird patch with my skin, but my skin feels like pretty even in texture everywhere right now, so I don't really think it would be that. But I don't know, that was kind of like a weird thing right there. I also feel like that this is bouncier. This is harder. Like feeling them, if this one feels denser, but this one like actually applying it kind of feels like a harder pat than this one, just kind of like bounces up and down. So in reality, this is the closest to a real Beauty Blender than this one. I do like the shape of this. This is the same shape as this one, which will be nice for a concealer, which I'll do in a moment. But a lot of times I honestly just use the pointy end even for a concealer. So I don't know. Let's go ahead and get concealer on. Okay, I just quickly finished up my base makeup, no eye makeup, so let's go ahead and talk about these sponges now. So I'm not going to film myself putting any foundation on with the Beauty Blender because I use a Beauty Blender all the time. This is my most used sponge, not this one specifically, this is a brand new one. But I use a Beauty Blender all the time. I know exactly how it wears, I know exactly how it feels using foundation, tinted moisturizer, primer, all sorts of stuff. So I don't feel the need to compare it or waste any more time because this video is already getting pretty long. So we're not going to put that on. So here's my final roundup on these sponges. It doesn't matter. If you're just going for how your face will look, in my experience, they have all been the exact same. I've not noticed any difference. With that being said, I do have preferences on the shapes and the squish factor I keep talking about. This one has the squish factor, all right. I don't like the shape of this one though. I determined after going back and forth testing these two, I definitely prefer the egg top shape rather than a sharp corner. And this one is the only sponge that does not have the egg top shape that these other four have. This has no water in it, that's why it's so little. I didn't like how hard this one was, didn't have the squish factor I was going for. It felt like it did at the beginning. It's definitely not as dense, but for some reason it feels that way on the face, like actually applying it. Like this one feels softer than this one does. So I'm not really a big fan of this one either, and I really thought I would be, so I'm kind of surprised by that. I really liked this ULTA one. I think this one did a great job. It's got the right shape. I liked the texture of it bouncing. And then this one I would have to say I think is my favorite. It's pretty much on par with the Beauty Blender. I feel like I'm a little worried that I am biased because of how good the marketing for this little buddy is and how much YouTubers talk about it and everything. So I've been trying not to be biased by that, but I do really like this sponge. Definitely more so than this one and this one. And if I had to like pick between these two, which are really similar, I would still pick the Beauty Blender. Is it worth $20 over, what is this one, $6.99? No, probably not. I would not say it is at all. But there is something about it that I just like better, but I am, again, worried that that's just like bias I have in my mind already. I don't really know. But I think this is my favorite sponge. If I had to just pick one sponge and recommend one to people, I would say that it would be this Real Technique sponge because for one, it is $5.99, so the second cheapest sponge of the group. It's got that flat edge if you need it, and it's got the pointy edge. It's got the squish factor. It's soft, it's smooth, it just does a really good job. It's cleaned very well, so I would have to say that that one is my favorite. But again, all in all, they all look the same when you apply makeup. Nothing looks different by sponge. So it's really gonna come down to your preferences and what you're looking in a sponge, what shape you want. You'll only know this by trying them out, but again, I would recommend this one. I think this is my favorite one. Still love the Beauty Blender. I don't think it's worth $20 once you do this whole experiment and like see that your makeup will look the same either way. Don't ever feel the need that you need to go buy a $20 sponge. So yeah. So that is the end of this video and the great sponge experiment. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm really gonna try to be more consistent in 2020 with putting out videos, so please stay tuned. All right, see you guys next time.